charge.
In a case of more...
Be quiet! I order you to be quiet!
Order, who does he think he is?
I am your king.
Well, I didn't vote.
Yes, I have Do Not Disturb. Maybe you were right not to message me at, a decent time for normal people.
I like that people are on different schedules. If Bart wasn't on such a weird schedule, we wouldn't be friends. He's
There
nocturnal, so that's
Yeah.
how come we can be friends.
That's very cool. Bart, of course, being Bart Bouchot, who does a number of podcasts with Allison Sheridan, who is here with us this week. Allison Sheridan, of course, is the host of the NosillaCast podcast. What are one or two of the shows that you do with Bart?
So he is a guest on the NosillaCast every other week doing security bits. So he covers all the latest security stuff that's gone on in the last couple of weeks. And he does deep dives into really nerdy technical stuff, which is super fun. But he also does tells you what not to light your hair on fire about and what to light your hair on fire about. So, the news is always, oh, my God, it's a horrible thing. And then he goes, no, this really isn't that big a deal. Here's why. And then we do programming by stealth together, which is where he is teaching the audience to program in an audio podcast, which sounds really stupid, but it isn't, because he writes these fabulous tutorial show notes. And that's been going on for, more than 5 years, where we've done HTML, CSS, JavaScript. We're just winding up learning the Git version control system, and we're going to start PHP next. So that's really fun. But he's also a host of his own shows, which you should listen to, Let's Talk Apple and Let's Talk Photography. And Let's Talk Apple is a 1 month look back at the big picture of what happened in Apple news. So not every microscopic flame up, flame down on a topic, but the big picture view of it.
Yeah, I got to do that show with him towards the end of last year. It was fun. And he's done this show before, too. Somehow, though, because his schedule is so screwy and my schedule is so screwy, we're to a place where we can't get together on when we can actually talk.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know. Because we talked about having him back on. I think the last time, though, I asked him, he was moving or something. But anyway.
Yeah, he's done moving.
Oh, good. Well, then why am I talking to you? No. That's
no one
not.
knows.
So I think that this may be my favorite time of the week. Because, we're into the week now. We're going, we're moving, we're humming along. I'll be completely honest, though, I'm not overly excited about today's topic. And I know I brought today's topic, but I also know that it's one of those topics that tends to be a bit contentious. Have you ever heard Apple say anything about privacy?
I know Facebook said some stuff about privacy and that Apple was wrong. I know that part.
Interesting. Okay. Speaking last week, as people hear this, at Europe's Viva Tech conference, which is apparently a big deal, Apple CEO Tim Cook talked about a lot of stuff, talked about AR, talked about Apple Car. Well, talked enough about Apple Car to say I'm not going to talk about Apple Car. Talked about a lot of different things. One of the things he talked about was privacy. We've been focused on privacy for over a decade. We see it as a basic human right, a fundamental human right. And we've been focused on privacy for decades. Steve used to say, that's Steve Jobs, by the way. Steve used to say, privacy was stating in plain language what people are signing up for and getting their permission. And that permission should be asked repeatedly. We've always tried to live up to that. If everyone is worried someone else is watching them, they begin to do less, think less. And no one wants to live in a world where freedom of expression narrows. Privacy goes to the heart of just one of the key values at Apple. I'm guessing it's below money. Because Apple also works with China. Now, I don't know. Here's my thing. I think they need to stop saying that privacy is a fundamental human right until they're ready to do something about it. And I got an email from a listener who said, well, what Apple says is they believe it's a fundamental human right, but they know that everyone does not share every belief that everyone else has. And this is the real world.
Exactly what I was going to say back to you.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I can tell you that I believe privacy is a fundamental human right, and I'm not doing anything about it.
Okay.
Does that make it not my belief? I mean,
well, no. Are you okay?
They can't fix everything, can they?
Well, okay. So Brian Chaffin would argue.
He would always argue.
That's true. How are you, Brian? No.
No, I'm not.
Really? Okay, because I thought you might. Anyway, Brian Chaffin says that Apple needs to get out of, they need to get out of China. They just need to get straight out of China. And I do agree with the person who emailed me. That is not the world in which we live. That is not the reality in which we live. They literally can't get out of China right now because there is, if you take all of the manufacturing in the rest of the world, they still would not be able to make as many iPhones as they currently make. They wouldn't be able to make as many iPads or Macs as they currently make or need. And they do obviously want to sell to people in China. But every time he says that we think that privacy is a fundamental human right, it feels disingenuous. It feels wrong. It feels wrong because they benefit greatly from doing business in a country that just doesn't even begin to agree with that.
Will it always be true in China? We don't know. It's worse now than it was under the current leader. So it could be better again later. There are people for whom using an iPhone will be better than not having an iPhone from a privacy statement.
Okay.
I would suspect. I don't know. The thing Tim Cook has always said is that his goal is to have Apple be in countries where they obey the laws because they have to obey the laws,
right? But
that they work from within to try to influence.
And that's the part where I'm not 100% certain that we're there. I mean, they do. I can't think of the best way to say it. Look, I'm not saying they need to get out of China. Ideally, ultimately, I think that would probably be a better thing. I was amazed. Did you get to read that New York Times article that I sent you?
Sorry, finish that thought. A better thing for what?
Well, did you get to read that? Did you get to read that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So the New York Times article that I sent to Allison, and I hope other people got a chance to read it as well. It was a guy, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Guthrie, thank you.
His last name.
Used to work for Apple, and what happened was he saw the things happen in Tiananmen Square back in '89, and he was just fascinated by what was going on in China, and so he took time after school and went and learned the Chinese language and worked in Taiwan, I believe, before going over to really study China in China, and came back and was very excited about how Western money going into China could make China more, what's the word I'm looking for? Less repressive, let's say. Now, I never learned Chinese. I never went to China to study China. And I never understood that argument because in Tiananmen Square, an indeterminate number of people died for standing up for their rights and their beliefs in China. And somehow, 5 years later, we're thinking, but if we make it easy for them to make lots more money, that's going to make everything better, as opposed to maybe we're buying better sticks for the bad guys to beat the good guys with. And that may be overly simplistic, except that article said so many people thought that, this flood of capital, this flood of legitimacy would soften China's stance on human rights. And it's actually gotten 1,000 times worse. Ask the Uyghurs if, you can find them right now.
Right.
And so I don't remember exactly where I was going with that point a moment ago, except to say that, if they're going to keep doing business, I think they need to stop saying it's a fundamental human right, because that message is not getting to China and it looks bad to everybody else.
Looking bad, okay. It looks like they're being disingenuous. It feels like it to you.
Yes.
But is it doing harm to the Chinese people? Would it do more harm if they weren't there? Because that's, if you're really talking about the human rights issue, wouldn't that be the only thing that would matter? I don't know the answer to my own question, whether it does harm to them to have iPhones.
Oh, no, I seriously doubt it does harm to have iPhones. And like I say, I don't think Apple necessarily should leave. Well, in the best of all possible worlds, in a all things being equal world, if it wouldn't affect Apple and if it wouldn't negatively affect the Chinese people, I don't think it's a deal that they ever should have done, but it's also way too tempting and way too, I mean, Apple is not Apple without the Chinese supply chain at this point. I mean, they're just not. They couldn't have scaled up in that way. That part in the New York Times piece where they're like, yeah, that mountain, what was it? That mountain is where the factory is going to be. And Apple was like, you guys have to be up and running in 6 months. And China was like, yeah. And when Apple executives came back 9 months later, no mountain factory cranking out their stuff. I mean, China does what China does, like China. I mean, they're incredible at what they do. What I worry about is, what are we saying about if you're doing business with a group of people who don't think that privacy is a fundamental human right, what are you saying about the people who are being oppressed?
It doesn't say that you're saying anything. I think attaching those two things together is a way to look at it, but it isn't necessarily a direct correlation, a direct causation. You know, it's more of a correlation. It's like, well, they said this and they said this, and these two things feel like they're opposites, and that makes me think worse of Apple. That might be a calculus they can live with. Let's turn it around a little bit and think about, so Google made a big deal about how it was leaving China. So they did take the high moral stand, right? They said, nope, we're leaving China. And then in 2016, they went back. And in that time that they were gone, did things get better for China? Was it a less repressive regime when they went back? I don't know the politics enough to know the answer to that question. Yeah, right. But I mean, I'm just saying, did it have any effect other than people in China didn't get to use Google services? Okay. It's just the existence of a cell phone in your hand is not a moral high or low ground.
All right. I think we're missing what I actually said was the easiest thing. Just stop saying privacy is a fundamental human right.
But it is.
Why
stop saying it?
Well, because
you look like a hypocrite when you say it?
Well, because you are a hypocrite when you say it.
Okay.
I mean, if you're gonna keep, okay. So, okay. Well, then never mind. Look, none of this is easy, and none of this.
I think it's easy to look at companies as, to anthropomorphize them into, moral or immoral, and they aren't. They're companies. They're amoral, really. We want Apple to do everything pure, but they're also a company. They're also a for-profit company. I don't know. I don't find myself needing them to be a certain way. I'm happier when they do things that are better for humanity. I'm happier when they do green energy stuff, but they don't have to.
Right.
They're choosing to.
Okay, but if they said we're the greatest company on the planet and then they started strip mining, you would say that seems a little hypocritical.
No, if they started selling their phones in a country that's strip mined, is what you really say. That's a great analogy, actually.